Unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade or so, you probably have heard of a little Cartoon Network show called Ninjago, Masters of Spinjitzu, which is essentially an animated series about Lego ninjas running around and saving the day from various bad guys. Nothing too special, right? Well, if you'd asked me this way back in 2011, I would have said, no, it isn't that special. My first glimpse of the series was back in 2012, when my younger sister began watching it on Cartoon Network before school. I would be waiting for my bus by the time she was up, so I'd occasionally pop in our TV room and see what she was watching. And what I saw was so bizarre to me. I saw Lego ninjas dancing on a stage. Remember Season 1, Episode 9, when they entered the competition to win the Fang Blades? That was my very first glimpse of the show. And guess what? I laughed. I said, "What kind of show is this? Ninja dancing on a stage? How stupid is that?" I feel you guys giving me death glares right now. But hold on a second, and let me redeem myself. I was exposed to Ninjago gradually. There were instances where I would catch it on screen, like before my sister went to school, or when I was scrolling through channels, and things like that. I remember one time my sister was watching it before school in 2014, when Rebooted came out. And for some reason, my interest peaked when I heard Kai's monologue at the beginning of the first episode, when he was describing how the Green Ninja defeated the Overlord. I think Vincent Tong did a really good job of keeping Kai's introduction sincere, but not preachy and overdone. That was the first time I had ever fully paid attention to what any of the ninjas' voices sounded like. And let me tell you, that in that little 30-second bit, Kai instantly became my favorite. I admit it was because I thought his voice was attractive, and the way Vincent Tong presented it brought depth to the character. On top of him having a nice voice and nice appearance, I guess, he became a fleshed out character to me, and that was a win to me. There was another instance where, after school, my mom and my sister wanted me to watch Season 2, Episode 5, and the reason was because they wanted to see my reaction at Lloyd growing up. Because, at the time, I had a thing for blonde guys, and they were sure that I would lose my mind over Lloyd's sudden growth spurt. And I did, I guess. I remember being slightly more interested in the character, but I still wasn't really into the show yet. It wasn't until I was sitting on the couch after school one day in 2015, not really having anything to do. I guess I didn't have homework or anything, because I remember just wanting to soothe my school-fied brain with some mind-numbing television. All I remember is scrolling through our Comcast On Demand and stumbling across the rebooted season of Ninjago. I was just looking for entertainment at the time, and I was already familiar with it thanks to my sister. So I just clicked on the first episode and began watching it. And let me tell you, I was hooked. I found myself clicking on the next episode, wanting to know what happened next. It combined everything I love about my favorite shows: action, fantasy, and fully fleshed out characters that interacted with one another in a believable way. I guess what struck me differently about this show was that the characters seem very human-like, which is funny considering they're Legos, but I felt like I could relate to all of them in one way or another. Speaking of Legos, I think that's kind of why Ninjago immediately gets labeled as a goofy kids show a lot of the time. I mean, I did when I first saw it. I thought, there's no way this show could have any substance to it. In fact, I actually avoided many Lego shows for the very reason that it was Lego and seemed uninteresting to me. Oftentimes, I think we tend to equate the term kids show with something shallow and repetitive like Dora the Explorer, or Blue's Clues, or even Teletubbies. I'm going way back here. But there are certain shows that have broken the glass ceiling that the term sets for itself. I mean, it is a kids show, but it's not necessarily just for kids. In fact, I think the target for the show has shifted to a slightly older demographic than what it was originally intended for.
You ninja failed!
Most, if not all Ninjago fans, are quite familiar with the abrupt design changes that were made to the series right after the Lego Ninjago movie came out in 2017. While it's debatable if these changes were good or not, they were changes, and set the stage for a shift in tone in the series from then on. Way back in the summer of 2018, I posted a video about how I was unhappy with the sudden changes, and how I thought if they were going to do something like that, they should have just made an entirely new series. I still agree with this opinion, but overall I'm more accepting of the changes themselves. But let's talk about the shift in tone that followed these changes. Right off the bat, I'm going to say that the series became noticeably darker post-season 7. Seasons 1 through 7 were definitely more kid-oriented, with more mature themes slightly sprinkled in, like growing up in season 2, loss in season 3, facing your mistakes in season 4, redemption in season 5, love can be messy in season 6, themes only older children and adults can truly understand and appreciate. But in season 8 onwards, those themes were more explicit and were more intertwined with the season's plot. For example, the Love is Messy theme with Jay and Nia in season 6 was more of a side plot to the central plot, which was Nadakon trying to take over Ninjago. In season 8, the main antagonist was actually part of the conflict, and left the audience with a sense of utter betrayal and devastation emanating from the main protagonist, which was Lloyd. New Ninjago, as I call it, likes to take things a step further in leading the audience deeper into themes such as depression and more adult themes, such as loss, and searching for one's identity. We saw a bit of that in the last episode of Season 3, and the first episode of Season 4, but it wasn't as prominent, and was often covered by humor. In New Ninjago, not only does the loss happen, but it emphasizes how it affects the characters. For example, Nia sitting on the edge of the bounty, we as the audience could clearly see that she was in a dark place after they supposedly lost Cole. In my opinion, this demonstrates how Ninjago as a franchise is trying to expand its demographic by being more, simply put, dark and edgy. At first, I didn't want to accept this version of Ninjago. I thought it was too dark, too rugged. Even my dad said it was edgy after he caught a glimpse of me watching season 10 one night and asked me what show I was watching. I told him it was Ninjago, and he made a face like, what? But after the initial shock wore off, I began to think it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. And they've done some interesting things with the show in this new era, such as the quote-unquote anime episode. Just imagine what Ninjago could have been if it wasn't tied to the LEGO franchise. I myself have even fallen victim to the what-ifs, like, what if Ninjago was made into a live-action movie? Basically, if you're looking at it closely, the last thing you could call the series is just a kid's show. I think if you're an older kid or even a young adult like myself, you can get into the show. You might even appreciate it more, because you may have experienced, I say that very loosely, some of the things that these characters have, and you can relate to them. Like any good show, this show can contribute its long-lasting success to good characters and good writing. I love the very believable interactions between these characters. I love the natural dynamic these characters have with each other. And most of all, I love how relatable these characters are.
No pizza for you!
It's easy to find something in common with any of the 4, now 5, now 6 main protagonists. Especially as a teenager, it was easy for me to feel like I was growing up alongside them, as the continuous development of the show and its characters makes you feel like you're kind of on this coming-of-age journey with them. Because underneath those ninja masks, see what I did there? They're really just teens, young adults, whatever, trying to find their place. Plus the premise of imaginably fit, unfit at times, has likely contributed to its success as well. However, like most shows, Ninjago has its weaknesses. Like, there are some major plot holes that are hard to get past. Some examples off the top of my head being like, all of a sudden there's an Emperor and Empress of Ninjago that was never mentioned before Season 8. Like, how does government work here anyways? And the fact that Sensei Wu is 167, but Garmadon is... wait. How does age work here again? It's clear that the show keeps adding backstory after backstory to aid in creating the plot for each consecutive season. In fact, after Season 3, most of the conflicts are based on past stories. Like in Season 4, Garmadon trained with Master Chen when he was a young man. In Season 5, Sensei Wu's first student, Moro, comes back to seek revenge. And in Season 7, the Time Twins return and are seeking power. You get the idea. But if you can look past these things and appreciate everything else that makes the show wonderful, then I would highly recommend it. Looking back at the very first episode until now, It's fascinating to see how the show has evolved over time, and after catching whiff of an upcoming season 14, it'll be interesting to see how the show continues to evolve. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.